This program is brought to you by the William L. Clements Library on the campus of the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. The Clements takes very seriously the opportunity to help people study American history and to use primary sources in that study as we explore questions about our past and relate them to the present. So today's episode is generously sponsored by Bonnie Didi. Thank you so much, Bonnie. And as we go forward, we mentioned this for those of you who've been with us since the beginning. As we start to think about whether we could continue this into the summer, we're hoping that people will help us by sponsoring these episodes. So thank you. And there's Joni. This is Joan Knoertzer. She collects miniature books, among other things. And let me just pause the share for a minute so I can double check and see if I can get her on. See who we have. Oh no, I still don't see her on the phone. Alrighty. Well, let's see. So, I don't know. Ann Bennington-Helper, are you able to call Joan and, oh, never mind. She's calling me. Let me just see what's happening. Hi, Joan. You couldn't get on. Well, let me see if I, oh no, let me see if I put you on speaker, what happens. Let's test it out.
Okay.
All right, people. If we put Joan on speakerphone and we both talk through my microphone, what happens? Okay, people say they can hear you. So
oh, they can. Well,
they
that's
can.
Unusual.
and you know, we're among friends here. People are saying that since the upgrades in Zoom, they've had their own issues trying to get connected and a lot of, you know, other difficulties like that. And we really appreciate everybody's patience with the technology, and they're eager to hear from you, even if we don't have the opportunity to look closely at your collection live today. I was mentioning that you and I can figure out some way to either do a little video clip or a, you know, take some pictures. So we will figure it out after this, because I know Joan got her really nicely organized so that she could hold them up for us. And so it'll be a lot of fun to see the items, and we won't let all your hard work go to waste. How's that? So
that sounds good to me.
I will mention by way of introduction that Joni is the owner of the Library Bed and Breakfast in Ann Arbor, and if anybody has visited her there, you know that practically every wall and nook and cranny is filled with books. And the star attraction is really this wonderful miniature book collection that she has. And Joni, how many books have you collected in your life?
Oh, total number, all sizes?
Yes, all
a
sizes.
Little over 40,000.
Oh my goodness, a little over 40,000. That's amazing. And how many of those are miniature books?
6,500.
6,500. Fantastic. So that gives everybody a little idea of how passionate and interested she is in this topic. In addition, those of you who are here in Ann Arbor know that Joan serves on a multitude of cultural and community boards, including the Clements Library Associates Board of Governors. She's involved in the Miniature Book Society, the Fellowship for American Book Society, the Ann Arbor Rotary Club, etc. So we're really pleased to have her here with us, even though we can't see her. But like I said, we are going to work this out. So tell us how you became interested in collecting miniature books.
Well, I downsized from where I lived and moved to another home right on campus at the university, and this is 25, 30 years ago now. And I looked at the wall one Sunday morning, and it had I have a 5-tier shelf for books, not big books, little books. The shelf itself is only 2 inches wide for the shelving, so and it's about 16 inches long. So and it stands about 2 feet high. So on the shelves there was hardly anything except this one little book. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, Grandpa, you gave me this book when I was 5, and it's still on my shelf. Well, what he had done, then he went to church. He's a good Presbyterian. He went to church, and they handed out those free little children's Bibles, child's Bible, with the story of Jesus. And we were up for Thanksgiving, having Thanksgiving dinner with him, and he gave me my first miniature, which is 2 inches tall and 1 3/4 inches wide. And it's not very long. It's a black, kind of a soft leather, something a kid could, curl and not ruin. And the typing is a little bit bigger. It's not the whole Bible, but it's a little stories here and there. There are about 80 pages in it, and it's black type, and it's gilt on the cover, and it says, "A Child's Bible with the Story of Jesus." And then you open it up, and it says, "From Grandpa." My grandpa's my name is Joan Knoertzer. His name was Johann Sebastian Knoertzer. Yes, he was named after Bach, but he did not have an ounce of music in his body. He must have been just passed over when the little music notes came out from heaven. And anyway, he handed me the book, and I would always go and play the piano. And I said, "But Grandpa, there's no music, no music." And he said, "Just play what you want to play. I'm sure God will hear it." So this is my story of my first book, and it has red dye on the edges. A lot of the books are very, for children, are very worn. So if you're collecting and you're looking for children's books, they're usually in abominable condition because kids have looked at it and looked at them and looked at them. So and anyway, I've been carrying this around all those years, and I thought, there got to be more miniature books out there. I mean, good heavens, it just can't be one. And so I had the Detroit News, and I had the Sunday edition. It was Sunday morning. It was 6 o'clock, and I had it in front of me. And there used to be a column on the left-hand side that said "Wonderful Things to Do on Sunday." And I looked at the very first one, and it said, "Go take a shower, go down to the train track and hop on to the Amtrak to Chicago and see 600 miniature books at the Columbia School of Book and Paper Arts in downtown Chicago. Just a hop, skip, and a jump from the Union Station. You'll have a great time. Then you can even come back that night." I mean, so get your shower. So, that's exactly what I did. I thought, my God, I've got an hour and a half to get to the train station to get on. And that's what I did. I showered, changed, grabbed a few books to read on the way, and went to Chicago. I walked in the School of Columbia School of Book and Paper Arts, which is a wonderful place. I joined for many, many years. And, they train people to make books and collect books, but they had it like an edible book festival where the kids make their books and they're all edible. You know, it's kind of a fun place to be, but they also train you to go into the book arts. So I went up to the second floor and they had this man standing there. He had 600 books, sure enough. He did not have a catalog. Oh, can you believe going to something that doesn't have a catalog? You know, I guess we're spoiled. But anyway, he didn't have a catalog, and I had brought with me a legal pad. So I walked in, and this man introduced himself to me. He said, "Hi, I'm Don Stanford, and this is my collection." And he said, "Welcome to the Miniature Book Society." And I said, "There's a society for miniature books? I didn't know that." And then he told me about how they had started this society. It's international. And he was president that year, and he decided to have this exhibition. And I started looking. I copied down the names of every single book in that exhibition. And then I thanked him, and well, not before I joined the club, of course. I joined the society. I mean, what else? And I got on the train, and who should be on the train but the dean of the School of Music, who used to be on the board of the Clements Library, and Dean Britton, Alan Britton and his wife Veronica, and a wonderful couple. Oh, just wonderful. And he's one of these genius writers, and he was the editor of the Music Educators Journal, and he was my dean at the School of Music when I was at the School of Music. And so I sat down with them, and they had been home visiting their home in Elgin, Illinois. And they asked what I'd been doing. I told them. I showed them my list, and they got all excited. And that's when Alan turned me on to American Tune books, which are regular size books. And so in one day, I got turned on to the Clements Library and also the Miniature Book Society. So I think it's just kind of apropos that I should belong to these two groups, right?
Yes.
So I started collecting tune books with Alan and Veronica, and we have what? I don't even know how many we have now over there. A couple of hundred or so.
Yeah, I don't remember either. If Emmy's on, she might chime in
Yeah.
and let us know.
Anyway, so from there on, I came home, and I started collecting books. And I kept in touch with Don Stanford, and he introduced me to a lot of other people, and I went on from there. And when I travel with book groups. I'd only do tours that include libraries or museums with book collections that we can see and things like that. So I've been all over the world, and one of the most interesting places was being in Russia a couple of years ago, 2 years ago. I got invited with the Fellowship of American Bibliophilic Societies, which is, I'm past president of the Book Club of Detroit, but I represent them on the board at the Grolier Club in New York. And they're a book club in New York City. And so I go to New York every year for their main meeting, and I represent the Miniature Book Society. I represent the Book Club of Detroit. And I also belong to the Fellowship of, or the Bibliophilic Society of Florida in Tampa, St. Pete. And so there are a lot of things that I do representing the books now. And I've met a lot of collectors. Oh my, they have a collector at the Miniature Book, at the Grolier Club. Neil Albert is his name. And he got turned on to little books. His granddaughter's dollhouse. Now that's what people usually think of when they think of miniature books. Those are called micro miniatures.
Oh, this is good, Joni, because I see that people already have questions about the size of books.
Right.
Yes.
Well, it depends on who you ask and when you ask it. One of my friends who is a member of the Grolier Club, she just wrote a book called Matter of Size. Now, it's not a miniature book. It is a 5-pound, regular 8.5 by 11 book. I can hardly carry it. I went to New York last year. It was covered in the New York Times on March 7th. If you go to the centerfold on March 7th, they did a wonderful review of it. But she has 4 sizes for them. One is called the macro miniature, and that's European. That's where it all started, of course. Started in Russia and Hungary, and there are many people in Germany and in Holland. They were all of them had miniature book people somewhere along the line. So when I was reading her book, she has the macro miniature as the 4-inch. So you can go as high as 4 inches or 4 inches all the way around. And then there's a miniature, which is 3 inches. That's what Americans usually go by, the 3-inch. 3 inches tall, 3 inches wide, 3 inches thick, whatever. And then there is a mini miniature, and then a micro miniature. The mini miniature is 1 inch, and the micro miniature is under 1 inch. So dollhouse is 1 inch, so it could be either. Now those are that's her definition. Others they only collect books that are 2.5 inches tall. I mean, it's a real crapshoot. When I was in Moscow, I became a member of the very first book club in the world. They inducted me in with the book group I was with, and they had 4 or 5 different ways of deciphering how tall their miniature books were. They actually have a National Miniature Book Museum in Moscow, so it's beautiful to see. It's nicely run. We have about the same number of books, however, but the Russians like to do books that are in English and Russian because we can afford to buy them, and they really can't. But they have wonderful, good binders there. Oh my goodness. Beautiful, the black enamel books that they make, the covers, they're just gorgeous. And they like to do things like fairy tales, and they use everything from Grimm's fairy tales to their own Russian fairy tales. They do some music. They do history. When Moscow was 900 years old, they did a wonderful miniature book on Moscow, and they did it. They have a habit of doing things in 3s, 3 different sizes. Now, we would call them micro miniature. I mean, you can hardly see it. And then there's the micro miniature, and then there's a miniature. And each of them was packaged up to honor the 900-year anniversary in a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous wooden case, all polished. You couldn't even see the seams when you opened the top of the thing. You couldn't find the seam when you closed it. And all these little books had their little niches inside. You couldn't barely breathe for fear you inhale those little books. In fact, some of them I've never shown people because I'm afraid they're going to breathe too deeply. But you ask how do you read those things? And the answer is with a magnifying glass, of course. And that's the symbol of the Miniature Book Society. Mine happens to have high-powered lights on it. They're the purple lights. And I can adjust them and look at them and find them, and find the inside of the book. I have a complete set of the Oz books in miniature, in micro miniature. They are actually readable. They aren't the entire book, but they are part of the book, and they are readable. And I have maybe of my collection, maybe 500 micro miniatures, and they're fun to collect. They are. But like I say, people go crazy over this. The same woman who wrote the book A Matter of Size, it's miniature bindings and texts from the collection of Patricia J. Peisner. She and Stephen spent 10 years doing a dollhouse and using the world's finest, and I mean finest, miniaturists. They recreated a Marie Antoinette 5-story home with 2 rooms or 3 rooms on each floor for the Naples Museum. They have gold chandeliers with the little birds singing and moving around with real bird feathers and gold chandeliers. The Marie Antoinette's desk is a marvel. It's all inlaid exactly the way her desk was. And they have a library. And the library is 1-inch books, typical dollhouse, 1 inch. And they're all from the 300 books that Marie Antoinette had, all in French. And they're the complete book done in miniature. Took them 10 years to do the whole thing. It is absolutely stunning. It used to be in the miniature room at the Naples Museum, if you're ever in Florida. You can see a lot of them there, but they've just taken it out, and they're going to be sending it on tour around the world. So that's gone. But if you do go around the world, you've got to stop in London and see the Queen Mary's dollhouse. That's 17 feet tall, and when you walk into the room, all the walls on the outside all come up equally. They raise them into the rafters, and then all the rooms in the whole place light up, including the library. And what Queen Mary did was she asked all the authors that she knew at that time to write her a miniature book. And they're on sale now. You can get them through the Queen's Sotheby's in London. The Queen sets the Queen's Bookshop, and they're wonderful to see. I have one of them. They decided to do one to send out, and it's Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's. One of the something about Watson. I can't remember what story about Watson. Anyway, and he wrote it. He didn't print it. He wrote it. So a lot of them. Oscar Wilde, she has an absolutely fabulous collection. And of course, if you go to Chicago, you can go down there.
Hey, Joni, I have it. How Watson Learned the Trick.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
And I'm showing them a close-up of the library on screen. The beautiful little detailed library. It's amazing.
Oh, they all are. You just stand there with your mouth open. When I was in The Hague, we went to a small museum. Every one of their museums has miniature books. And this Gus Turco and his wife Anya, they made miniature books. And he had a beautiful, beautiful piece of furniture made for all of his miniature books. And I wish you could be here with me today, because I have a little farmhouse that I bought. It's called the Little Farm Workshop, and it's a replica. It stands about 15 inches high, and it's about 12 inches wide. It's about 16 inches wide, and then it goes back about a foot. And I have it all set up with her. She was Jane Canine was the publicist and also the bookmaker. She wrote the books, and she did them on herbs and on flowers, and she loved nature, and she liked her covered bridges. She moved out of the city, and she decided she'd go to the country. So she went to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, out into the county. She bought a little farmhouse, and she turned it into her workshop. She had it made into a little dollhouse kind of thing, and I bought it at auction. And inside, I have 24 of her prints that she did in miniature, hanging on the walls and inside. And it's pretty beautiful, and she has a book to go along with it, of course, a small book, which is 2 inches tall and 2.5 inches wide. And that's all done in color, and it's all etchings. It's all etchings.
So this leads to people are asking, and you and I talked about this when we had our dress rehearsal as well. People are sort of interested in are the books printed? Are they handmade? Is there a combination? Does it have to be one way or the other? And I know that you and I talked a lot about the books being usable versus being art.
Yes, well, Stanley Marcus, Neiman Marcus, Stanley Marcus had a publishing business, and you always, in his catalog, you always saw a book of some kind. And he and his wife collected all kinds of books, letterpress books, manuscripts, hand press, letterpress, also photographic downloads and downsizes. In fact, we have a member of the Miniature Book Society who made over 515 of these at 1 inch in photographic, and she's done almost every book that you can imagine, famous book, and made very special covers for them with gems on them, rubies and diamonds, and oh gosh, all kinds of things. Well, Stanley and his wife collected books, and one day Stanley came home, and he had another book with him, and his wife said, Stanley, we're running out of room here. You got to do something about these books. I mean, they're all over. We just don't have any more room for books. You got to stop collecting books, and we've got to stop publishing them, because we just can't do this anymore. So he said, oh, okay, well, this could be hard, because once you get into this stuff, you really get into it. And one day he was walking out to the store, and he passed a bookshop, and it had a new display of miniature books in the window. And he stopped and he bought them. He put them in his pockets, and he thought, she's never going to know. She's never going to know. I'm just going to read these little books, and I'll hide them somewhere. And of course, he forgot about them. He left them in his pocket, and every 2 weeks she would clean out the closet and have everything cleaned, and she emptied the pockets. She emptied the pockets, and she found these little books. Well, you think at the moment she was furious? Well, she was. But then she started reading the little guys, and she fell in love with them, and they went into a business. And their business is called Some Such Press, and it's miniatures. And Stanley has written a book, the very first miniature he decided to write. He had to start writing them. And it's called Minding the Store by Stanley Marcus. And it's a wonderful book which tells you, it's about 2.5 inches tall, about 2 inches wide, and maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. And it's got color photos in it, and drawings, and it tells pretty much, and it's all signed, and he signed every book he made, so they're highly collectible. And so it depends. We've got a lot of printers here in town who do books. L.V. Jones is here in Ann Arbor, and there are a few others who just, they love the miniature books. Well, all the bookstores know who collects them. One day they had a young man at Westside Books went in, and Jay saw him, and he said, I inherited a desk from my grandpa. He said, nobody else in the family wanted this ugly little desk that my grandpa used for years. He said, and I got stuck with this desk. So I brought it home. He said, then I opened the drawer, and way in the back of the drawer was a tiny book. And it was, about 2 inches high, or maybe 1 3/4 high, and 1.5 inches wide, and 1 inch thick. And he said, I wonder if this is of any. Oh, gee. And so he's a grad student here at the university in engineering. It's postdoc. And he needed some money. They all need money, right? So he said, well, I wonder if this is worth anything. And it's got a hard leather cover with gold embossing, borders, and a very fancy, for each of the bands of the inside of the book, it's sandstone. and it's gold edged, all three edges gilt, as they say in the trade. And it has a couple of wonderful bookmarks attached to it, so they have little silk ribbons. And a picture of this fellow from the 1700s. And Jay said, well, I'm going to give you the name of Joan Knoertzer, and you can give her a call, and she can tell you more about this than I can. So, well, it ends up to be the Book of Psalms. And it's by Jeremiah Rich. It's 1790s. And Jeremiah took this book, the Bible. He did the Psalms, and then he did a New Testament and an Old Testament. I have a book of Psalms, and it's I bought it from this young man. He came over for tea and cookies, and I told him that the book was highly collectible, and I gave him two names of famous people in the United States who do appraisals. One is in California, in Carlsbad, and the other one is in Boston. And they gave him appraisals over the phone. You don't even have to see it to give an appraisal on this book. It's rare. And so he called me up about a month later, and he said, can I come over? Would you be interested in buying this book from me? And I said, well, what did they quote you? And he told me, and I said, 5 figures. That's about right. And high fives, yep, high fives all the way around. I would be very interested in buying it. He said, well, I've got another reason I want to sell it. I said, I thought you didn't want to sell it. You want to say, no, I'm going to sell it because I'm getting engaged. See what luck does to you? Screws around with your book collecting. That's all. Anyway, he decided that he came over, and I saw the book, and I wrote him a check. And what he used the money for was a ring that he had designed. He had designed it himself, a blue diamond ring. He used a jeweler in Saline. I don't know what the jeweler's name was, but I helped buy that ring for his girlfriend, and they got married on Valentine's Day this year. So that's the story of love and the book. The thing that makes this book unusual is it's in shorthand.
This is definitely one we need to take some pictures or video
in
of.
Shorthand. And his uncle had done the first Bible in shorthand. And so he took the Psalms and redid them in shorthand. Now, there isn't anybody who can decipher this, I'll tell you. But it's absolutely gorgeous to look at, and it's so very collectible. So that stays in the vault, but in any case.
Now, tell us again what year that book was done?
In the 1700s, so it's about 1790.
And is that your oldest book?
No, I have one from the 1600s. It's a micro miniature. It's done in silver covers, and it's only 12 or 13 pages, and it's so precious that a famous binder a lady binder whose name I can never remember. She's buried practically next to Longfellow in Boston. But anyway, she did a holder for the book in the shape of a book. So she made a little tray, which is like the spine of the book. She put this little book in it, and then she closed it, and it looks like an old book, and it sits on my bookshelf. I mean, it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. So that's my oldest book. And do you have any idea when miniature books were first created? Oh yeah, they are called books. The Sumerians, Babylonians, used the way to count their trade, whether it be sheaves of wheat or oil, containers or anything, on wet pieces of clay, and they were small pieces of clay. Cuneiform tablets are called, and they were damp, and they just take the little end of a piece of wheat and mark how many were there, and And those are very collectible, and they are the very first. I happened to go to the Sumerian department at Johns Hopkins on a tour, and they had a full-size slate of Sumerian, which I think might be interesting to all of you who probably had children or are a child or whatever at the university or away at school. And it was a fellow who was writing home to his parents asking for more money and better clothes. And that's BC, folks. Done in the same clay. Right next to it was a little cuneiform tablet.
That's very cool.
So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, so it, you know, it has a long history and a lot of different, takes a lot of different forms. Some people are in books that are actually made via miniature press, and any information you might have about that.
Yeah, there are some people who use miniature presses and fly type, it's called, which is, you know, very, very small. Some people only collect fly type books, letterpress with fly type. You really do need your magnifying glass for that. There are many Bibles that were done in the early 1800s, late 1700s. Many Bibles done with India paper, or we call it Bible paper. You've probably seen them. They've got 800 pages, 900 pages, and they're thin, 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 thin. And those are letterpress. Those are letterpress, and the type is again the fly, or maybe 2 point instead of 1 point. But it's, yeah, there are people who are still doing that. In fact, if fly type comes on the market, it's gone in 2 seconds. Yeah, it's highly collectible. Yeah, Hollanders used to have a large number of presses, old presses, and they had a miniature press too. So
cool.
It's not as big as the one in the Clements library, I'll tell you that.
Exactly. I was thinking I might go back a couple slides, because I know these came up in our earlier discussions. I have in front of me a slide of, I gotta make sure I know which slide this is. One moment, please. Slide 7. Oh, let me go back one more.
Were they the almanacs?
So I think this is the display from the McGee miniature book collection.
Oh, McGee.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we talked about that a little bit in our previous discussion. I don't know if you want to say a little something about that or not. These are very tiny books.
Oh, yeah. Caroline McGee, she's 92 this year, and she has been to every miniature book conclave. She was one of the founders of the Miniature Book Society in the United States. And she has been collecting since she was a child. And she fell in love with her dollhouse, and she's just been collecting ever since. She's just signed the final papers for endowing her collection, which is at the University of Virginia. And we met down there 2 summers ago in Charlottesville, and had a big party for her, and honored her with lots of gifts. And they had a wonderful display of her Bibles and of her, the small Bibles are called thumb Bibles, because if you hold up your thumb, that's about the size of them. And Ruth Adamite, another famous collector from Cleveland, collected those her entire life. So you'll see some of those. Ruth's collection and, let's see, Caroline's are at the University of Virginia. She has 16,000 books. So if you think 6,500 is plenty, no, you should see hers. I mean, they're absolutely wonderful. But, you know, in order to collect, um, you need a billfold that's bigger than miniature, let me tell you, and a credit card that's bigger than miniature. um, it's some of them are very, very expensive. But you know that the 20th century in the United States saw many, many people go into miniature bookwork. And we must have over 350 printers during that century. And that's what I've been honing in on the last, about the last 10 years. Because a man named Robert Bradbury, who is at Clark University, he did the 20th century United States miniature book catalog. And he interviewed everybody, the printers who were still alive, and listed the books and that kind of thing. And that's what I use for my Bible for collecting. So when I find a catalog that I like, and catalogs are all over the place. You know, there are a lot of people who have a few miniature books. They don't know what to do with them, the book dealers. Well, they do more and more, but anyway. There's a wonderful collection at the University of Iowa. Charlotte Smith, excuse me. She and her husband collected together. It's not a large group. It's about 3,000 books that are there. And I'm intending to give my books to the University of Michigan. The thing that's a problem for me about giving these wonderful books is that I want them to be seen, you know, and you know where they're going to end up. They're going to end up in room 550 or building 550 on North Campus where nobody can see them or touch them. So I don't know, you know, I every time I buy another 20, 30 books, I think, oh my God, you know, I wonder if I should do this or not. But those are the major collectors. And you know, even do you remember Leopold and Loeb? Remember that famous
Yes.
story about the two boys who murdered that young man? Mrs. Loeb was a miniature book collector. And that book collection is at the downtown library in Chicago. And you can see that too. It's quite interesting and nicely done. That's a little history.
We are very appreciative of your philanthropic intent, and it's really lovely, and I'm sure that your books will get used, Joni. So tell us maybe about, I know you had a couple of favorites pulled up, and I know it's hard when you can't show them, but maybe just tell us a little bit about a couple of your favorites.
Well, of course, my favorite is the one I wrote.
Yes.
You know, Stanley's not going to get away with being the only one that could write his own book. So take that, Mr. Marcus. Anyway, I was at the Ann Arbor Book Fair, and I came across this medieval book artist, Randy Asplund. He's from here in Ann Arbor. And I had invited the international group, the miniature group, to Ann Arbor for its yearly conclave. And I planned it the same weekend as Carytown Book Fest. So we had an outside meeting. Of course, wouldn't you know, the first week of September, it was 35 degrees out, you know, and we're all out there. And these people are from all over the world. They're just absolutely freezing out there. But anyway, they, I wanted it for those people. I wanted to show them, you know, a miniature, a pride that would be in the Clements Library. Because I did this, and I'm going to be giving it to the Clements in honor of John Dan, who is the one who asked me to come on the board. This is the story of Joan of Arc. Of course, my first name is Joan. And so I'm named after Joan of Arc. Have not been in any battles lately, but in any case, it is a 3-inch by 3-inch book. Randy did the bookmaking. I did the story. And I did it mainly from the trials. from the trial data. And it's a 3-banded, it's done in French binding from the 15th century, and it's all of the ink for the illuminated pages. Every page is illuminated. There are 14 full-page illuminations done. It's single hair brush. The surgeon, he used a surgeon eyepiece, and he did all the colors. Over 300 varieties of colors are in this, which we made from scratch. I put me in there, but I did pick some old oak stuff, that makes the actual manuscript itself. And we actually bought the sheep and went out to the farm, picked out the sheep, and got his skin and stretched it and tanned it and dried it and oiled it and dried it and cleaned it, and got 7 signatures out of it. And then I could decide how many pages I could have in my book. So we did that, and this took 2 years. It took 2 years. So every page is absolutely beautiful. It's on sheepskin. It's on vellum. And the clasp for it is Joan of Arc's armor. So her hand comes around the front of the book, and the front of the book has her sword on it, done in ivory and silver, and it's removable. And when you remove it, the gauntlet comes off, and you can get into the book, and you can see her life. At the very end, the very last thing in it, after the colophon, is a picture of Randy, because this is very medieval, giving me the book, presenting it to me under the scope of the Holy Ghost. So because everything was done for the greater honor of God then. And so there he is presenting the book to me. I'm in a full gown and a big tall hat, and the dove is over us, blessing us for the project. Now, it took 2 years, and by 2006 is when I wanted this done. But Randy said, it's not going to be done. I'm really sorry. Well, I said, at least you can describe how we got all of the beautiful vermilion and the greens and the blues, and you have to have a special color for the blue for it's just it's amazing. So I said, and all the flowers from where she lived. We have all the flowers and everything in the design, and he even put in 2 of my cats. So in the margins. So it's really kind of a beautiful book, and it is my pride and joy, actually. And I'm sitting in the audience along with 300 people. We had 300 people in the reading room at the Clements, and he had the table, that huge library table set up with all of his clam shells with all the colors in it. He was explaining everything. And at the end, he said, Joan, come on up and take a bow for writing the book. He said, it's too bad we couldn't have it ready, but, oh, did I say couldn't have it ready? I'm sorry. I told a little lie. Well, I could not talk. I was crying so hard. He had finished it. So we passed it around the room, and, it became the cover story on the Miniature Book Society here and in England and Europe. And it will be at the Clements Library.
Well, it's really spectacular, and I did share just the cover. I do have a photo of the cover from Randy's website. So,
good.
Yeah, so people at least got a little glance.
Well, I want to thank everybody for listening to me. You're better than a classroom full of teenagers, that's for sure. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it all, and I want to thank Bonnie Didi, who is sponsoring this morning. We're at the special collection. So, but thank you all for listening.
Yes, thank you, Joni. I'm just glancing quick to see if there are any last questions. Someone's asking about the demand for miniature books in today's market. What have you seen related to that?
Well, I just got off the phone this morning with my friend out in Carlsbad who has just been given 600 miniature books by Mrs. Strode. And Mrs. Strode had been collecting for her whole life. And they are top-of-the-line books. And a doctor in Switzerland bought 400 of them, thousands of dollars worth, thousands. And I picked up a few, and a few other people did, and they were gone in 2 weeks.
Okay, so pretty strong. Pretty strong
I can
market.
tell you that the demand is very interesting. You really, if you want to get into the medieval and the 16th, 17th centuries, then you're talking much higher amounts of money. But I think the most I paid for one of my books in the 20th century was $2,000.
Okay.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and the least was 50 cents.
Nice.
So.
Well, and you and I had talked about, those fun little Cracker Jack books that, so, miniatures are a fun thing. And I didn't have a chance. We asked people about what kinds of miniatures they collect, but I couldn't really watch the chat and try to troubleshoot our technical difficulties. So I'll have to go back and read about those. But I think there's
they're
something
all,
really fun.
The latest group of young people, they certainly don't have these highfalutin things. But they've done things very remarkable, like taking, like this man who took a matchbox, and he put the cover on it, Captain Cracker Jack, and he wrote the history of Cracker Jacks and put it on an accordion fold piece of paper. You could just fold a piece of paper and put it in the right size and stick it in there. And he wrote the history.
Right.
And you can just open it and close it, and that was $5.
Yeah. So there's a lot of fun little
There
miniatures like that.
Remember, there are lots of kids who are interested in this thing,
Mm-hmm.
in this too. And if your grandkids or something are interested, there are lots of books out there that are miniatures that, you used. My book here that's the 20th century does not include the things you buy at Barnes & Noble on the way out the door, those kinds of books. Andrews McNeil, Running Press, those kinds of books, mass-produced. Mainly, they're done in anywhere from 3 copies, only 3, to 1,500 if you have a professional printer do them.
Right.
If you're doing it yourself, you're not going to do any 1,500.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do maybe 250, maybe. But mostly it's like you're going to do 30, 40, 50, and that's all there are of that book.
Right.
So.
Well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joan. And
you're welcome.
For anyone who might not have heard my explanation at the beginning, we had a very successful dress rehearsal, tested out the technology. But for some reason this morning, Joan got caught in a Zoom loop where it kept downloading, but not actually letting her get in. And so we're very happy to hear her stories. They're wonderful, but we will figure out some way also to get some photos or video of her wonderful collection out to you. It might not happen today, but we'll make plans.
At Christmas time, I can show you, I have 2 Christmas trees that are up all year round.
Oh, yes.
Which have over 700 little books on them.
Yeah, you have them displayed so beautifully in a couple of different ways.
I display them all over the place. So.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I mean, really, now it's time to get up and, stretch, right?
Yes, exactly. So I'm just going to do a couple of housekeeping things.
Sure.
I want to mention.
Thanks a lot, Angela.
Yes,
thanks for listening, everybody. I'm going to sign off.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So this is the last weekend to order Bookworm apparel. If you'd like a t-shirt or sweatshirt with our fabulous design on it. Please order those now, and proceeds will help the Clements Library. If anyone is new this week, I just wanted to let you know that you don't have to sign up again for the Bookworm. You're signed up. So next week you'll receive a reminder an hour before the program to sign on. You don't have to sign on live. You can wait until we send out the email and watch the program later. We love to have people sign on live because it's a lot of fun to have the conversations. But everyone who's signed up will receive the email with the resources along with the recording afterwards. So that will continue. Next week, we will have a reader panel talking about the Civil War. So that is going to be a lot of interesting material. And just a reminder that we will take a break on July 3rd because of the holiday, but then continue weekly throughout the summer. Thanks again to Bonnie Didi for sponsoring today's episode. And I know some of you have indicated an interest in future sponsorships, and I'd love to talk to you more about that. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, here are the upcoming topics. And if you would like to make a gift, of course, we can provide a link for that as well. It's very helpful, as you know, during this time when we're not open and things aren't quite the way they usually are. Those gifts really do mean even more to us. Speaking of opening, please note that even though the governor's order is lifted, we are not ready yet with our full plan for reopening. So our reopening date is still to be determined. So please check the website for more information if you were planning to visit the Clements Library. Okay, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate your ongoing interest in what we do, your ongoing interest in history and collecting, and have a wonderful weekend. Hope to see you next week. Bye all.